Gauff clarifies comments on American tennis fans. Loses to Booz's Monero. Coco Gauff has tried to clarify her comments about American tennis fans on social media before her United Cup singles match against Spain's Jessica Booz's Monero. Perth, Australia, AP. Coco Gauff dropped a post on social media just before she started her United Cup singles match Monday, hoping to add context to her recent comments about American tennis fans. The issue was clearly a distraction and the match didn't go well for the number 4 ranked Gauff, who struggled in a 6-1, 6-7, 3, 6-0 loss to Jessica Booz's Monero in Perth. It gave Spain a 1-0 lead over the defending champion US team in the Group A contest ahead of the men's singles and mixed doubles. "I'm going to clarify because people are dragging this out of context," Gauff said in pre-match post, referring to the worst comments she made earlier at the tournament comparing support for players from smaller countries with the kind of support American players receive on foreign soil. Gauff said she wasn't expecting fans to travel to tournaments specifically to support their compatriots, but instead was talking broadly about the audible and visible support at events, other than the US Open, that attracted American tennis fans. "Those from smaller countries come with their colors and flags and it is clear on who they are supporting," Gauff said in her post. "I was just speaking from my perspective. I understand the financial aspect of things and no, tennis is not accessible for everyone. It was more of a comment for those who are already attending and how I wish they were as passionate as those from other countries." Gauff, a 21-year-old two-time major winner, said her initial comments were in response to a question at a news conference. "I was asked and it was simply an observation I noticed about other countries versus mine, that is all," she said. "Nevertheless, I am grateful for any support no matter how big or small it is." In a clip of the news conference posted on X, Gauff said, "I feel like we're definitely in the tennis department the worst when it comes to that." She added that at previous team events she'd noticed that players from other countries get more animated support from their fans than the American tennis players do, but attributed that to the US having so many successful teams and athletes to support. Gauff said there was always good support for the Americans from fans who travel to the Australian Open in Melbourne, but I would like to see some more Americans if we make it to Sydney, United Cup finals, in Sydney than there were last year. In her first match of the United Cup last weekend, Gauff had a 6-1, 6-1 win over Solana Sierra to help the US team open with a victory over Argentina. Copyright 2026 The Associated Press. All rights reserved. This material may not be published, broadcast, rewritten or redistributed without permission. Coco Gauff, Between Expectation and Expression. On a late summer day in 2025, in front of thousands at the US Open, Coco Gauff stood with a championship trophy at her feet, having just won her first major title. It was a fitting moment for a young woman whose talent and tenacity had captured the tennis world's imagination. Yet as she rose through the rankings and became a global figure, the expectations on her, both on and off the court, grew heavier. Months later, in Perth, Australia, at the United Cup, Gauff found herself in the spotlight once again, but this time not for a triumphant point or a dramatic comeback. Instead, she was navigating the complex interplay of words, perception, and fan culture. ESPN.com. The statement that sparked reaction. In early January 2026, Gauff was asked about fan support, a question that should have been routine. Instead, her answer drew attention and controversy. What she said, and how it was interpreted, became an unexpected focal point. Gauff suggested that American tennis fans weren't as visibly supportive at international events as fans from smaller countries, who often come decked in flags and colors and make their presence known loud and proud. She said this from her perspective, not as a critique of fans' passion, but as an observation based on what she had seen on tour. WSO's. Her words weren't incendiary in isolation, but in the spotlight of social media and international tennis coverage, where every syllable can be dissected, they were seized upon. Soon enough, Coco's comments became shorthand in headlines, hot takes, and fan debates. Context: what Gauff was actually trying to say. Few athletes walk into a question intending to stir controversy. But what Gauff was really pointing to was this: the visibility and expression of support vary from place to place. At events such as the French Open or the Australian Open, Fans from smaller nations often turn out in spirited numbers, waving flags, shouting players' names, wearing their colors with infectious energy. For a young player moving through an international calendar, that kind of passionate support is impossible to overlook. Gauff tried to explain that she wasn't saying American fans don't care. Rather, she was speaking from her experience and trying to clarify that she wasn't criticizing fans or suggesting they didn't have pride in their players. She even acknowledged the financial and logistical challenges many Americans face in traveling halfway around the world for tennis events. ESPN.com. Her goal was context, not conflict. The social media clarification. Before stepping onto the court in Perth for her United Cup singles match, Gauff took to social media to deliver that clarification. In a calm and thoughtful post, she said fans were taking her earlier remarks out of context and that she wanted to be clear about her perspective. She emphasized that she appreciated any support, whether vocal or quiet, and that she wasn't dismissing the loyalty of American fans. The Washington Post. Her message underscored two things: the challenge of speaking candidly in an era where comments are immediately broadcast and amplified. The genuine appreciation she holds for those who support her, even if her experience sometimes makes counts and colors more visible than others. But even as she sought to defuse the situation, another curveball awaited. On court, the match against Bouzas Monero. Shortly after posting her clarification, Gauff took the court to face Spain's Jessica Bouzas Monero, a rising talent who entered the match with confidence and poise. What followed was a hard-fought battle that ultimately didn't go Gauff's way. She lost 6-1, 6-7, 3, 6-0 in a match that swung dramatically between dominance, resistance, and resurgence. WSOs. There were moments of rhythm, moments that showed her trademark grit, and, particularly in the second set, flashes of competitive fire. But in the end, Bouzas Monero took control, seizing points at crucial moments and closing out the match with authority. It was a result that left the defending U.S. team trailing early in their Group A encounter, and it was also a personal disappointment for Gauff, who had hoped to reset on court after the swirl of off-court conversation.